Always learning and growing. Attracting the right people and keeping your vision in focus every day. This is the Brian Covey Show.
Hey, well, welcome to another edition of the Brian Covey Show. Today is going to be fantastic. So this is the first time Nada and I have actually connected up, actually over video, but we connected up originally on LinkedIn. And I was originally drawn to her because those of you that know me know that I love developing people, company culture, talking about entrepreneurship and how we can help people where they are move into their personal greatness. And so today we're going to unpack a lot. Nada's been on not only TEDx stages, but also with Google. And I've looked at some of her content that really inspired me as far as a leader. And even one of her posts today had me thinking, which I think for all of us, if we can find those people that will challenge us and allow us to think, and then we can respond. And as leaders right now, there couldn't be a better time for us to rise up and to make sure that we're leading strong. And so, Nada, for those of you, just quick background, the Rise Up For You. I love the company mission. I saw some things there and that attracted us to each other on LinkedIn. Do you mind giving people just a little bit of background about yourself, the company, and everything you're up to?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian. It's really an honor to be here with everyone today. So let's take it back just a little bit. The first career that I ever had was as a performer. So I used to tour the world internationally as a singer and a dancer. And I soon recognized touring internationally that the top challenges that we were dealing with really had to do with like the team, the cast, the people, cultural differences, right? Communication. And so after I got done living out of a luggage, I came back to California and I really started to explore this idea of leadership and how we work together and really cultivating the soft skills, right, that we need for success. And I quickly became an executive of an education corporation, did my background work in executive leadership. And again, same thing, seeing the same things with team members and culture and how we work together, how we show up, how we communicate. And that really started the journey with RISEUPFORYOU, which is what we do today, and inspired me to build the company from scratch and helping companies enhance their culture and develop their people with these essential skills that we don't always think about. You know, a lot of times we think about the hard skills and the technical skills, but we forget about the soft skills that really help enhance all the degrees and the credentials and the certificates that we get.
Oh, love that. And I can't wait to dive into some of those soft skills and some of that with you. So I'm curious, going back a little bit, so you talked about being a singer and a performer and all that. So I'm in Nashville. I'm actually a bass player. And so that I heard you singing before you went on and did your talk at TEDx. So where did that start for you as kind of a young kid? Were you always musically inclined, or was that something you moved into later?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I discovered my voice when I was probably at 12 or 13.
Wow.
Okay. And so I didn't really know that I had something, but I just remember listening to somebody on the radio and singing it and then thinking, we kind of sound like each other. Like I'm matching the pitch.
Yeah.
And my father, who I adore, he encouraged me to go join the choir. And that's really where it started. And then going through high school, I was singing the national anthem. And then I actually did my bachelor's degree in stage performance. And that's where it began.
That's so cool. And I'm sure there's probably correlations today because as we get on video, as we start, enhancing our leadership skills and to step out, if you can perform in front of people singing or choir, wow, like that's not easy. I remember the first few performances being a bass player and playing in the band, you were so nervous. Like, I don't want to mess up. I got to remember this. So any correlations as you think about, I'm always curious, like being a musician and singing in the choir and all that, would there be anything you would correlate to leadership today that you feel like would have some of that prepared you, right, to kind of go through that journey some?
100%. And I always pull it in. And it's interesting because we never know how our past is going to affect our future, right? In the time we can't see the future, so we don't know. But today I do a lot of public speaking. It's one of the main parts of the company and with the team. And so being on stage is very comfortable for me now, right? To be able to talk with you and to get a message across effectively. Yeah. But the skills that I would say it's cultivated the most for me is that emotional intelligence, because as a performer, you have to be able to connect emotionally to get the song across or to get the music across, especially when you're in countries where they don't speak your language. right? They don't know maybe the English words that I'm saying, but all they can see is my nonverbal communication and maybe the emotion that I'm evoking. But the second thing is that social awareness, right? So being on stage in a room of 1,000 people and then feeling that, this isn't working, so I need to adjust as a performer in the moment, on the spot. And leaders have to have that all the time, right? We have to be able to feel our team, see the energy in our team, recognize that this strategy is not working right now with them, or this team member I can feel looks a little bit under, and now how do I adjust and support them?
I love that. And so I can remember back as you're talking through EQ years ago, and I want to say it was probably 10 or 12 years ago, I had one of my leaders, Cliff Rohn, actually gave me that book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Yep.
And I remember I took the assessment, and let's just say the first assessment was not pretty. It made me very well aware that I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a journey. So for those that are not as familiar with EQ, I know this is an area you've talked on. You have some real experience, but also you have great insights that I've picked up on. How would you define or break down EQ for those that maybe are not as familiar as you or I might be with that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that, because EQ right now is a buzzword, right? And so we're hearing EQ, but we really don't know.
What's it mean?
Exactly. So really EQ is being able to identify, understand, and manage our emotions, as well as identify, recognize, and influence the emotions of others. So there's two sides to the coin, right?
Yeah.
But there's 4 pillars that fall under emotional intelligence that, in my professional experience and expertise, is really comprises the whole entire workforce and leadership. So the first 2 pillars have to do with the self, and that's self-awareness. So being aware of yourself, your emotions, how you come across. And the second pillar is self-management. So how you manage your emotions, intrinsic motivation, the ability to adapt, which is very important today. And then the last 2 pillars have to do with others. And this is really where leadership comes in. So the third pillar is social awareness, and that's being able to have empathy, understanding where other people are coming from, social organizational awareness. And then the fourth pillar is relationship management. And this is all things leadership. So team building, conflict resolution, being able to influence, coach people, building relationships. And so when you think about it, these 4 pillars are really the entire workforce and the challenges that we see today with communication, diversity and inclusion, leadership, empathy. It all falls under these 4 pillars. And under these 4 pillars, we have another 18 competencies that get even more deep, right?
Yeah.
Such as that motivation, such as accurate self-assessment, self-confidence. And these 18 competencies really are the key and the core to sustainable success for an individual and for an organization.
Oh, and I love that, because you broke that down very eloquently. So those that don't know it as well probably have to go back through. And I thought that was interesting as you talked about, the 18 competencies, as it's not as easy as it looks. And I found even through my own leadership journey, there's been lots of times I've fallen down, and you learn from that. I even shared something today about, our greatest storms is usually when we become more aware of how we respond, who we are. And as you look at leaders today, I'm curious, do you see during this time of quarantine, what's really separating the leaders that have high EQ from those maybe that you can pick up very quickly that's not a strength for them? What are you seeing that separates them today?
I think it is the EQ, because part of emotional intelligence is self-management and being able to adapt.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that leaders are also people, right? And so leaders also feel, they also have stress, they also have challenges that are in their life. And great leaders are the ones that kind of have a little bit more of a grasp on that, right?
Yeah.
So they can manage their stress a little bit more, they're able to adapt, and they're instantly problem solvers. So if something's happening in their life, they can make a shift, they can give you strategy, and they can really put that ego aside and not let it interfere with having to lead. And I think that this is what we're seeing today, is that a lot of leaders today right now are also in the same environment of stress and uncertainty and what's going on.
Yeah.
And the ones that are able to lead the team effectively are the ones that are able to adapt, manage their stress, control their emotions, build that self-awareness so that they can be there for their team and manage their team effectively.
Yeah, and I've been an observer during this time, right? Because I'm trying to figure out, I used to be in front of our team. I would get on a plane and I would fly out to markets and see our team. And to your point earlier, part of that EQ was I could see body language. I could actually physically like shake hands, fist bumps, all that. And you're going, okay, that's not happening for a while. So the shifts that are occurring today, we were even talking about this the other day, is like how important posture is and how you show up on video.
Yeah.
This was not even a topic before, right? So
Yeah.
picking up on that has been fascinating for me. As you're looking at some of this around EQ, what would be some of the things if somebody says, hey, you know what, like this isn't something either one I'm very familiar with, or two, I just want to get better at it. What are some of the practical ways that leaders today that are leaders of, whether it's a small team or larger team, how can they work to improve their EQ in this quarantine time where it is a little bit different environment, as you said? I mean, my kids are always here, always. They don't go anywhere anymore.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And thank you for asking that, because I'm a huge fan. When we talk about emotional and social intelligence, I'm a huge fan of providing strategy and things that are sustainable. Where sometimes we talk about mindset, but then it's not tangible. It's like, great, do I just go and do it? Like, how do I do it, right? And so the most important concept behind emotional intelligence, and like the starting point, is accurate self-assessment. So it's first figuring out, what do I have to work on, right? Because we all have these blind spots. And so the first thing that I would recommend, and we actually have this, and I can send this to you, Brian, for your community, is taking a self-assessment, okay? And we have a 24-point self-assessment that you can rate yourself on, okay? Nice. So like, what do you think you are in confidence? How great of a leader do you think you are in regards to your communication? So you're doing a self-assessment, but here's the best part, and here's the tricky part, is now taking that same assessment and giving it to 5 to 10 people that you know, right, that you trust, that are going to give you real feedback, and have them do the same survey on you, not on them, on you.
Yeah.
So this is where we can see, is my assessment of myself accurate or is it not? And this is where we can see the blind spots. So if you give yourself a 5 on leadership, right, or a 10 on leadership, and these other 10 come back and give you a 2, then we can see, oh, maybe I'm not as positive as a leader as I thought I was, right?
Right, the gap.
This is one of the greatest lessons that I learned, because when I was an executive, I had 200 staff members under me, and I had an open door policy, and I thought that I was like, very warm and fuzzy, and come in and sit down at the chair, and I love to talk to you. And people kept saying, you're intimidating as an executive. Sometimes it's hard to talk to you. And I'm like, that's not true. Like, get over that. Like this that's your projection, right?
Yeah,
like, that's right. And then finally, as an executive, I did an anonymous survey because I wanted to grow as a leader for 200 people. I was the only executive that did this anonymous survey, so you can be comfortable, you can say the truth, and I wouldn't know who it was. 75% put that I was intimidating. 75%.
Wow, like overwhelming. Like, okay, this is real.
So this is real. And so that was a great learning lesson for me, that what I thought about myself and how I was showing up, people were not receiving that. It wasn't the same.
Yeah. And it's almost, when we get that feedback, and it's probably better that it was overwhelming, that it wasn't 60%, right? Or 50%. It's like, okay, 75, 3/4 of my team believe this, and this is something there. And at that point in your career, when you were an executive, did you kind of lay out a strategy to say, hey, I think I'm warm and fuzzy. Like I want to invite people in, but clearly there's this gap I always talk about, is the way people perceive and then where we actually are. Did you have anything that worked for you that you were able to say, okay, now I'm aware of this. How do I move into this space of, as a leader, we do need to be someone that's approachable?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And I think it comes down to communication too, right? And really understanding that, okay, this is a challenge. Now I need to actively work on it.
Yeah. So
we don't see the challenge and then say, cool, I'll work on it. No, now I need to actively take steps to work on it. And so one of the things that I did was just call it out. Call out the pink elephant in the room and say, hey, I got all those surveys. Thank you so much. I noticed that one of the key factors is that maybe I could come across intimidating. And as a leader, I'm going to work on that. Okay. And really and we're afraid to do that sometimes as leaders, is be vulnerable. But again, it's all about humanity. And people appreciate when a leader can say, I'm taking accountability, or this is a strength that I've recognized from the team that maybe you guys need more of or less on, and we're actively working on it. People love that because now they're connected to you.
Oh, I love that. That's powerful, because this is something we've really been diving into in our team, is this modern leader that's emerging has these strengths in EQ. But I love how you took practical insights and wisdom of, I'm going to get feedback. I'm going to figure out what's really happening here, because without that, to your point, we may think we are one way. We may think these are our strengths, but then only to find out that's really not where we're succeeding. And our team needs us to elevate our game and to up our capacity. And I know your company, and you do this a lot, is you guys work on one of your core competencies I saw was, building out company culture.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as this, because I think there's a direct correlation, the leader and the culture and how people are going through life together in that community you talked about. Talk a little about what healthy cultures look like that maybe have some of these things in them, that the leader is seeking feedback. They talk about EQ, they're engaged there. What do those cultures actually look and feel like today? Because sometimes it's tough to, like, what's a great culture? I hear that all the time. I don't think we really, sometimes we just don't know how to qualify that.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I like to say, and I think you heard this on the TED Talk, is that we're spending a lot of time and money on cosmetic culture.
Yes.
It's like these external things that really aren't effective in the long run, like slides and bagels on Monday, and like those kind of things that we're excited about, but at the end of the day, they don't really transform people.
Yeah.
And so I think the things that are really, really important for today, the first one is psychological safety. And so that's being able to cultivate an environment and a culture where people can actually speak up without fear that there's going to be repercussions that are harmful. And when I say speak up, I mean in a positive way. And that leads me to the second part, which is a growth mindset, is that we want to have a culture of learning and that's solution driven. And so we want to teach our team members, and this comes from the top, we want to teach our team members that it's okay to voice your concern about something, but bring me solutions.
Yes.
Or like bring some creative ideas to it, because then all we're doing is complaining and then we can't solve anything, right?
Yeah.
But creating that psychological safety where an individual can come to a leader and say, hey, I'm really struggling with A, B, C, and D, and not having any fear about what the leader's going to do back. But then again, that growth mindset of, here's what I'm thinking, what are your thoughts? Or here's some solutions that I want to just throw out and bring to the table. Those two things are very important. Growth mindset and that ability to continue to develop and grow, as well as creating that safe environment, are really the very first steps to having a positive company culture. Because, I mean, you know this better than anyone, Brian, is that our people are the product.
100%.
Right? So people matter, and culture is made up of people.
Yes.
Right? And so you got your culture, you got your people in the middle, and then the product. So if the culture is not good, then the people aren't going to be good, and then the product is never going to be at its full potential, right? And your clients are never going to receive the full potential of the great company that you have.
I love how you broke that down, because those are some words we use in describing. It's like this growth mindset piece of sharing. One of my visions I shared with our team was, I want this to be a team and environment you can grow your career and go multiple different ways without ever having to leave our organization, because we won't stop. We won't put a ceiling on you to say, oh, you've grown too much, or no, we won't let you do that. Like, we've gotten out of our own way, is what I tell people, to say, you know what, you're really good at this. Normally this wouldn't have been the path, but people that are growth minded, they don't want to be stopped by, wow, we haven't done that before, or I'm not sure we can do it that way. I mean, nothing worse than stifling a successful team member that wants to enhance your culture by saying, we're not open to that. And as I heard you mentioning that growth piece, a lot of companies talk about growth, and I hear this, we want to grow, we want market share, we want to, more profit, whatever their game is there. And what's always been interesting to me is you can go back to really like retention. You can go back to how many people get promoted. Is there diversity in the leadership in the team? And what would be things you would say to look at to know that your company and your culture is really focused on that growth minded, as you said, and open to ideas? Like, how can they be aware of that to know versus just saying it, you know?
Yeah, I think that the first thing to look at is just the data. And so I'm all about data, connected with the soft skills, right? Because it's a see, but it's like, let's look at the employee turnover rate, right? Let's look at how often your employees are engaged. These things are really, really key. If you have a high employee turnover rate, then we need to take a step back and ask ourselves why, right? Or if we have employees that are coming to work that are just doing like the basic and the standard of coming in, I'm doing my thing, Why? There's a lack of engagement there. And so these are the first two things to take a look at. And that's why I always encourage like doing surveys. So doing an anonymous survey before they enter the company, while they're in the company, and most importantly, when they exit the company, because you want to understand, why is an employee leaving, right? Is it because of the leadership, the culture, or are we not giving them the opportunity to grow? But this is really the most essential part, is really looking at your team members and taking a step back, because it is possible to get your product out there and be successful financially as a company, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to be sustainable if we don't do that work with the people. And I think that that's unfortunately what people are seeing right now, is that we're in this pandemic and this crisis, and a lot of companies that have been able to rely on just their product, right?
Yeah.
They're not doing so well right now because their people haven't been cultivated, and that culture hasn't been. What we're seeing now is strong teams that have strong culture that are all working together, and they're like, let's adapt, let's put out a new product that's good for today. Let's make that shift. And I think it's really clear right now, like how company culture is so important and effective in order to adapt in moments like this that are crisis driven, that our product has to change and shift, and it's going to rely on people in order to make that happen.
I love that. There's a lot to unpack there. We talked about this the other day. I think it correlates, as we said, in our business right now, there's a lot of technology change because people are working from home and they're realizing whatever industry they're in, they're realizing there's parts of their job to serve their customers well, and even their team members, technology's got to be in an all-time high and be efficient. And what we've noticed is really the companies, I feel like, that are adapting that technology the fastest, training their team, going through it. It was said the other day, and I had to really stop and think about, I had someone share with me, they go, Brian, over the next 90 days to maybe even 6 months, you're going to see company cultures defined for possibly the next decade, because how they adopt and respond during one of the largest crises we've seen in the U.S. history, of how this is all happening, much out of our control. And we're seeing even today, job loss reports, not good. And how companies respond to that has been fascinating. But I loved how this person was sharing with me that, Brian, you need to think of your company culture could be defined for the next decade. So what would you do today and over the next week and month that would define that culture so that it would be superior during I thought, wow. And we took us back to developing our people, connecting with our team, giving them ability to make decisions. So that's what, man, kind of took me a second. I was like, that's powerful to think. This isn't just a short-term impact. This could have long-term. So you've worked with companies. I know you've spoken on this too, is like when you were doing the TEDx talk, I was kind of fascinated there. One, I loved your voice when you opened up, Stand By Me.
Thank you.
Killer. So I got to put the plug because I thought that was awesome.
Thank you.
As you were sharing and kind of shifting gears over to the talk, one, how did you get to speak at TEDx? What was that experience like? And then kind of frame up like why you chose the topic you did, because I think it correlates to a lot of what we're talking about today. And I thought that was a cool experience. One of my dreams one day, maybe get on TEDx stage. You crushed it.
Thank you. No, maybe, Brian. We're gonna make it happen.
Let's do it.
Well, I really appreciate that, and it was really, I think it was just synergy. With the great work that we're doing with RISEUPFORYOU, and we connected with somebody here in Southern California that was putting, the TEDx together, and they saw the bio, they saw the LinkedIn, they saw the work that we're doing, and they were like, yes, please, we want you to speak. And so that's really just what happened. And it was probably one of the greatest achievements today professionally, because it takes a lot of work. It's like a marathon, it's compared to an athlete who's running a marathon for a speaker. It's a speaker's marathon. I mean, there's 4 to 5 months of just not only like preparing the talk, but preparing mentally. Because it's like you get that one shot, right? You can't have your notes in front of you. You got the clock that's ticking. Like there's a lot.
It's a short time. I didn't realize all these talks, like yours was around 8 minutes or so. And I thought, how you probably had to prepare for that to be just succinct in the energy and body language and opening the flow, like to keep people's attention.
This
is hard sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think that, and the question is what do you speak about then? And what do you speak about in 8 minutes or 12 minutes or 10 minutes? And, Rise Up For You is really all about humanity, right? If I were to put it in more like soft terms, it's about teaching humans these human skills to be successful. And the reality is that the workplace and our personal life, they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so someone can work their entire life developing themselves personally. But if they're in a company culture or in a workplace that's toxic, right, that's not aware, that doesn't have the growth mindset, it's going to take that individual back. Okay.
Yes.
And vice versa. A company can have an amazing company culture and the leaders can be doing all the right things. But if you bring in team members or employees that don't have that mindset, that aren't in alignment with your values, it can break that company culture really fast. And I'm sure you've seen that as well.
Absolutely.
And so I really wanted to merge this idea that these soft skills and creating this development, it works hand in hand. Companies and people have to work together to foster individual and corporate well-being. It's a handshake. Yeah. And really a lot of the problems that we're seeing today, a lot of the challenges, they are people problems, right? Companies get to a point where their product is working. It's like,
yes.
Product works. Like we have a client base, people love what we do, but what's going to make that sustainable is now, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's the people and the culture behind that product.
100%. Yeah. And I loved as you were going through that is a lot of companies have kind of had their rise and their fall and they've seen it and they forget, they think it is the product driving it. And I love what you said earlier was, really our team is the product because there's so many things that we can deliver the actual tangible product. But the experience, and we talk about that a lot lately, is the experience is the product. That's what they talk about. They talk about the person and that experience. So as you're looking at this, I'm curious your vantage point of developing team members today. And you mentioned soft skills a couple times, which I love because I think they're often overlooked. What are some of the primary soft skills today that's going to make somebody a better team member, right? And be able to contribute and be part of not only a great team at work, but even I think going home, being someone that's great father, they actually mom, dad, brother, sister, they actually contribute outside the office. What are those soft skills you see as the ones that we need to be thinking about?
So I would absolutely say, going back to the point that we talked about earlier, is that emotional intelligence. Like if I were to say to a company right now and they would say, all we have is one opportunity to train our team one day. What should we do? I would say EQ, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Because it really is going to hit everything from the individual. And mind you, that goes to like confidence, how they manage themselves and how they show up. Now think about how many sales teams can produce more sales simply by enhancing an individual's confidence to talk on the phone.
100%.
Right? Individuals' ability to manage themselves maybe when they're working with a client that's not so kind, right? And that can really be the game changer for a lot of companies. But then on the flip side, it's the communication, it's the leadership, the ability to include diverse team members. That's, again, that latter half of the emotional intelligence. So really the emotional intelligence training is the key to starting that conversation and opening the floodgates of positive company culture and the people skills that are so essential.
I love that. So I'm sure our listeners are going to be thinking, okay, if I don't know EQ, I don't know emotional intelligence that well, or maybe they do know it well enough, this will highlight some opportunities for them.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I know we've talked about this some is like, I look at leaders today, which are probably the ones that you think about are going to drive that transformation and adoption. For you, Nada, what does a great leader look like? How would you define a great leader today?
That's a good question. So the thing that I always say is be a potential seeker. Be a potential seeker in yourself. You constantly pull the potential out in yourself and be a potential seeker for others, for your product and situations. The more that we can look at individuals and our team members and say, I know that there's more in there, and inspire them to be their best, the better the whole collective picture is going to be. And I think a lot of times leaders, they miss that part, right? They miss that. They don't capitalize on this opportunity of looking at other individuals and helping them be their best. And the truth is, a lot of individuals, they don't know how to do it until that leader says, I know there's more in there. And I see more in there that you can be and you can do. And then that employee goes, really? You think so?
Yeah.
I guess I never thought about it, and then they show up differently, they produce differently. So cultivate the potential in yourself, constantly seek that potential in you, and constantly seek that potential in every one of your team members.
I love that's powerful. And that's one, even if as you were describing, I thought about moving from your head to your heart a bit of like, how are we connecting? And I share with our group, we talk about this as some of our language is pulling out your inner greatness. Like your inner greatness is different than mine, which is different than, other team members, but we all have greatness. It's just like you said. And as you were sharing that too, I thought back, there's been people in all of our lives that have believed in us. Hopefully, at least one or two people that have made that almost investment is the way to think of it. And they've said, yeah, I'm going to validate you, but I'm going to validate you where you are, but I see you can do more. I see you actually have potential. And so I loved how you shared that. This has been unbelievable. Yeah, I could go on. I feel like for a long time, you've shared so much with us.
Thank you.
What have we not covered? Not that I know your company, you guys are doing a lot of great things and you've spoken on some stages. What have we not covered that maybe the audience you think could add value and just something you could share with them that maybe we just didn't ask or didn't think of and didn't get to cover today?
Well, I think the main thing is really just taking action with these skills now, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing about emotional intelligence and soft skills is that it's very easy to comprehend. So when people listen to this interview, they're going to say, yeah, like be a kind person, be confident in yourself, be a good leader.
All that.
We all get it. But it's a lot more difficult to actually implement. And we really have to build the muscle, just like an athlete. We really have to train the soft skill muscle. Well, with hard skills, it can be more difficult to comprehend, right? Like the math can be harder to understand. Yeah. But once we get it, it's like autopilot. We get it. 2 + 2 = 4. We don't forget it.
Yeah.
Soft skills is easy to comprehend, but more difficult to take action and implement. So if I were to say anything, it's don't just listen to this, but really actively work on building your soft skill muscle so that you can be more productive, so that you can be a great leader, and so that you can have that career edge. Because all the research is showing right now for the next 5-10 years, especially with AI coming in, that it's the people skills that are going to keep you competitive.
That is so true right now. And I love how you frame that it's almost one of those that we're starving for, sometimes we have all this information coming at us, but we're actually starving for the wisdom to then go take the action we know we should. And that's what separates people. So thank you for sharing all that you have today. Nada, this has been so much fun. I'm sure we could talk, and I'm looking forward to continuing our relationship and getting to know more and cheering you on. This is really one of those opportunities as we created the podcast was how do we share information that's going to be relevant and real and people could take action so that they're not just consuming content, but they're inspired to go take action. And so, yeah, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And we'll include in the bio and the summary notes the ways that you can connect up with Nada. We'll include some of the EQ pieces today that you can learn more about this and direct you back. But on social, where can people find you in case they listen to this first and actually connect up with you to follow along?
Thank you so much. It's super, super easy. So RISEUPFORYOU is our social media handle across every single platform. So we were lucky to get that. So at RISEUPFORYOU on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, we're really everywhere. And please connect with us on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's been another edition of the Brian Covey Show. Every time we bring an episode, we try to bring you value and really create an awareness of an opportunity to bring out your inner greatness. So today has been nothing short of awesome. So Nada, thank you again. And until the next time, guys.
Subscribe, rate, and review The Brian Covey Show today. Go to briancovey.com.